Okay, everybody, we have reached the bottom of the hour, so let's get started with today's LTEN webinar, 3 ways to drive sales pipeline acceleration, sponsored by Ignite Selling. My name is Tim Sosby. I'm editorial director for LTEN. It's my pleasure to welcome you today and to serve as the host of our webinar. I'm going to start here with some housekeeping items, including how you can submit any questions or interact with our speakers today. We are planning a 60-minute session for you. You'll notice that your phones are on mute. So any questions you might have, please do type into the questions window there on the control panel on the right side of your screen. Just type in the question or the comment, hit the submit button. We'll receive it. We'll try to get to it throughout today's program or save it for Q&A. But I always do urge people, send in your questions while they're fresh in your mind, and we'll get to them as quickly as possible. I also wanted to point out the handouts window on that control panel. There are a couple of items in the handouts window you may wish to download, including a copy of today's presentation slides, and also some information on save the date information on the LTEN 2021 annual conference. You can highlight either or both of those titles, and it will walk you through downloading to your desktop. And if you have any questions with that or any issues with that, reach out to me at my email address here, and I'll be happy to connect you with those handouts offline. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available on demand in the LTEN Self-Directed Learning Library. We're going to send you a follow-up email about an hour or so after the webinar with a link to today's recording, and you're welcome to share that link with your colleagues as you like. And speaking of sharing and follow-ups, as you leave today's webinar, a short follow-up survey is going to appear on a separate browser window. Please do take a moment when you leave today, look for that survey, and quickly share your thoughts with us. We produce these programs for you, so your feedback is always appreciated. And along those lines, again, there's my email address. If I can help with anything around our webinars or your LTEN membership, certainly don't hesitate to reach out. Okay, with all of that said, I'm going to turn things over to our speakers today and let them introduce themselves and get started with the content. You're going to be hearing today from Steve Gielda and Meredith Bontempo. So Steve and Meredith, thank you both for joining us, and over to you.
Well, thank you, Tim. I appreciate that introduction. And thank you very much, those of you who are here and those of you who are going to be listening to the recording, for investing a little bit of your time today to learn a little bit more about things that you can do to help drive pipeline acceleration. As Tim said, my name is Steve Gielda, and I am the co-founder of Ignite Selling. And oops, let me go back. There we go. I'm the co-founder of Ignite Selling. And I started the business in 2011 with a friend of mine, Kevin Jones. And we've been working in the healthcare life sciences space for almost a little over 2 decades, which is kind of hard to believe that we've been working in this industry for a long time. You can kind of take a little peek of some of the companies here that we've worked with and had good pleasure of partnering with. And I'm based here in Austin, Texas. You see Meredith Bontempo, a client and a friend of mine for a long time, who's going to be joining us today. As you may have seen in some of the pre-marketing, there was a gentleman by the name of Alan Adams, who was supposed to be joining us today, but he has fallen sick. So a special thank you to Meredith for kind of stepping up and kind of helping us out. And Meredith, I'll give you the opportunity to kind of introduce yourself as well. Meredith, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Steve. So as you can see, I think Steve was being generous and putting 15 plus years. I probably am closer to 20 with him. So he was being very kind to me, and I appreciate that.
You don't look like it.
Oh, thank you. So we'll just stick with the 15 plus. So 15 plus years in healthcare sales. I'd say the first half of my career is definitely spent in the field and sales, specifically in the med device industry, and then transitioning into management and specifically sales training and development and sales enablement. So I've held multiple roles in those areas, and I love that second to last bullet point. I believe that process, tools, and coaching are essential for revenue acceleration. I've experienced it myself, both on the side of being in the field as a rep, and then on the other side in terms of training, development, and enablement. And I'm based outside of Boston, Massachusetts.
Meredith, thank you again for joining me today. I really appreciate it. There's 3 things that we're going to go ahead and commit to you today. 3 things that we're hoping for you to walk away with. Number 1 is to provide you a pathway to effectively leverage each stage of your pipeline process to maintain pipeline momentum. We're going to talk today about what are those things that you in sales enablement can do to help your managers and your sales representatives do a better job of accelerating revenue. Number 2 is we're going to work with you. We're going to provide you some support to support your sales reps in terms of gaining access and better managing the key influencers inside their accounts. And number 3, we're going to work on trying to provide you with some tools and some solutions to help your team do a better job of identifying their customers' decision criteria that, when they're able to be identified, can also help create urgency and accelerate pipeline. The reason this particular topic, we decided to talk on this particular topic today, is because ever since the pandemic hit, our customers today are telling us that they're struggling with achieving the Q2 and Q3 revenues. As we're stepping into Q4, we're starting to see things like elective procedures and physician offices opening up a little bit more. But let's face it, this new world that we're in today, things are different. And we can't go into 2021 thinking that what we did in 2020 is going to help us accelerate the pipeline any faster. So we're hoping that you can walk away with a couple of ideas that might be very useful to you. Let's kind of start off by talking about this pipeline. Why do opportunities stall in the pipeline? Well, there was some research that was conducted by the Harvard Business Review that shows that 61% of executives admit that their sales managers have not adequately been trained to effectively manage the pipeline. So therefore, if we don't have managers who know how to coach to the opportunities that are in the pipeline, they're likely to get stuck. But why else do opportunities get stalled? Well, other research are showing things like this. There's not enough trust and rapport with the customer. There's not enough pain to change. Customers don't like saying no, so opportunities kind of stall, or your contact really isn't the decision maker. I think these are things to which all sales representatives have fallen into at one point in time, these types of traps, which cause opportunities to stall. Well, Ignite Selling has also done their own research. And
I just want to make sure the TV's.
Tim, can you mute your microphone, please? Thanks, bud. So Ignite Selling did their own analysis as well. And we did this by talking with account managers, by asking them 5 questions. I'm going to share what those 5 questions were around kind of who they're gaining access to, who the strongest advocates are. And what we did is we asked those same 5 questions to their customers. Let me share with you some of these interesting insights. First of all, these are the 5 questions that we asked. I'm going to go through each one of these questions, and I want to provide you some examples of responses that we got from the account manager and the response we got from their customer, okay? So let's share with you. The first question is what's driving your sense of urgency to decide now? The account manager tells us they had money to spend by the end of the year. So that's what the account manager is telling us. The customer's response is government regulations have forced changes in therapy and we're losing patients to competitive hospitals. See a little bit of a disconnect there between what the sales rep is thinking is really driving the urgency? Let's look at the second question. How many people are involved in the decision process? Sales representative tells us there is 4 people involved: supply chain, OR director, risk manager, and a chief nursing officer. The same question was asked to the same account manager's strongest advocate inside the account. They told us there were 6 people. And you can see who these people are: the chief of gastroenterology, OR director, surgeons, risk managers, VP, and the CNO. So again, not quite in alignment here. Let's look at the third question. Which 3 people have the greatest influence on the decision and in order of influence? Sales representative said supply chain had the most level of influence, followed by risk manager and OR director. Same customer we asked the question says, top 3 people: chief of gastro, chief nursing officer, and risk manager. So really, there's only alignment between one person, risk manager. What about the other 2 influencers? Well, when we sit back and we kind of unpack that just a little bit, we asked the questions and we found out, of course, the sales representative knows who these influencers are, but they underestimated the importance in their role in the decision. Let's look at the next one. What are the decision criteria used to compare one solution to another and order of importance? Account manager tells us price. No surprise there. Price is always the #1 most important criteria, right? The sales rep. Followed by speed of procedure. That's all that mattered. That's what the account manager is telling us. That same customer tells us, well, #1 was ease of use, followed by recovery time, then price, training, and then breadth of product portfolio. Wow, did that sales representative really miss it there? And then the final one is, who do you believe what do you believe is your company's greatest strength for this particular client? Account manager says it's speed of procedure. The same customer's strongest advocate is recovery time. Now, the customer is saying that the best thing that you can bring to us, that we love you, is the fact you provide us a better recovery time, not speed of procedure. So think about this just for a moment about, we want to know, why do opportunities stall? Why does the sales cycle maybe sometimes take longer than it needs to be? Well, this just gives you a little bit of an example of why that might be. So let's take a look at, let's go to this next question here. Oh, Tim, I think, there we go. I got it, Tim. Thanks. So here's a summary of our findings. Why do things slow down? Number one, reps assume they understood what was driving the hospital's sense of urgency, or maybe the physician's office sense of urgency. Number two, they lacked an understanding of the hospital's metrics. Number three, they assumed they knew the decision criteria. Number four, they missed opportunities to quantify value. And number five, they assumed their adversaries were neutralized and they knew all of the key influencers. So these are reasons why opportunities slow down. Why do they stall? And so I challenge you guys to think about, what is it that's causing your sales pipeline to slow down? Meredith, I got a question for you.
Sure.
Let's get you engaged here. You know, some of this research was done, frankly, when you were at your other company. We used your other company as part of our research, as well as some of the research we're doing right now while you're at Teleflex. But can you share with the group why you believe that sales teams are often making these kinds of dangerous assumptions throughout the pipeline process?
Absolutely, Steve. So from my own experience as a sales professional and over the years in training and development, I know that sales teams are under a lot of pressure to not only perform, but to perform quickly, to perform fast. And because of this pressure to produce results quickly, sales reps often make assumptions about their customers and accounts just to get through the sales process as fast as possible. Also due to the complexity of these customer accounts, sometimes sales teams might find it difficult to obtain the information that they need, and therefore just make assumptions to just keep moving forward. If you think about how healthcare organizations, hospital groups, and practice groups have become so complex over the past couple of decades, as you mentioned on your other slide, reps are now having to work with potentially 3 times as many customers just within one account versus just a few years ago. Well, taking the multiple key stakeholders within a single account, very limited access to key players within that account, definitely all plays a role into why reps are making assumptions. And remember, these were all issues before the global pandemic.
Yeah.
Our current state has just totally exacerbated this.
Wow, nice response, Meredith. I really think that I like what you said there about A, the complexity, B, the pressure to have to drive revenue right now, and so therefore they're skipping potential things, and the assumptions that they're making. I mean, the fact that it's more complex and there's pressure to drive more revenue really does drive those assumptions that sales reps are making. So I think you're spot on there. Let's hear from you guys. Let's go to the next slide here, Tim. I got it. Okay, here's a poll question. Let's hear from you guys. So here's the poll. Oops, let's go back. Here's the poll question. Thanks, Tim. Here's the poll question for you. If you were to ask 5 managers what must happen to move an opportunity from stage 2 to stage 3 in your pipeline, would you get a consistent answer? And you can even change that question to sales rep. But if you were to ask anyone in your organization that's in sales, what must happen to move an opportunity from stage 2 to stage 3, would you get a consistent answer? So is it absolutely they would know, for sure? Maybe they might know, or there's not a chance. So let's go ahead and let's place your place your answers up here. Is it A, B, or C? Are the stages of your pipeline process clearly defined enough that everybody knows exactly what has to be done before they move an opportunity from one stage to the next. So we'll give you another couple of seconds. It's a pretty easy question. Tim, do we have a pretty good response from the percentage of people that are taking this poll?
We do, Steve. It looks like almost everybody has voted. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll at this point. I'm going to move slowly to the poll, though. If you're making a choice, keep making that choice. And there we go. Everybody, thanks for sharing. I appreciate that. And let's look at the results.
So let's take a look at the results. Nobody says absolutely. That's kind of an interesting result, that nobody believes that the how each stage is defined is clearly enough. And I think the real answer is exactly what you have here. Maybe, in other words, some people in the organization might be able to tell you, but the reality of it is the likelihood of most managers or sales representatives to truly be able to say, hey, these are the things that must be done in order to move an opportunity from stage 2 to stage 3. The honest answer, if we really kind of peel this onion back, is probably the fact that it's not a chance many people truly can. So let's go ahead and let's continue with this, Tim. If we can go ahead and go to the next slide. Thank you, Tim. So how do we drive better consistency, better clarity around it? Well, accelerating the pipeline starts with defining each stage of the process with critical milestones. We're going to talk about what critical milestones really are. But in the short answer is they are strategic actions that, if not taken, puts the opportunity at risk or it stalls. So these are some examples of critical milestones. So you see where these bullets are. It's about identifying the key influencers up front in the early part of the process, understanding the critical needs of the client that we can satisfy, understanding the buying process. These are critical milestones. But it's not just about identifying the milestones, it's about ensuring that there's a validation of those milestones as things change throughout the process. Many clients in the life sciences space, it's not simply a one-week decision. Several weeks, maybe several months, maybe even several quarters. And so when we sit back and we look at this, it's important for us to come back and validate. So you see a couple of milestones highlighted in blue. And these are things that we should be looking at. So it's not just about identifying the key influencers, as you see here in the discovery phase, but maybe what we also need to be doing is validating the influence and advocacy of those. Which of these key influencers love you and which of those don't? Maybe as you get a little bit further into the process, it's good not to just know who loves you and who doesn't, but it's about being proactive and developing a strategy to neutralize those adversaries. Or maybe as you're a little bit further down the line, it's about leveraging those advocates to promote adoption or utilization. So when we're talking about wanting to go ahead and leverage these milestones, this is a great tool to help accelerate managers' coaching. These particular milestones creates the job aid for the managers to use to help accelerate the process. If Meredith was to be coaching me, and I tell her that I have an opportunity in using this example in the strategize stage, Meredith is smart enough not simply just to ask me, did I accomplish the milestones, but let's just take this one identified decision criteria other than price. Meredith's going to ask me a question that simply says, Steve, how does the decision criteria of the top 2 influencers differ? Well, let's be honest. If I know that there are 3 or 4 key influencers and I don't know the decision criteria of how they differ or whether there's agreement around that decision criteria, the likelihood of that opportunity stalling in that strategize or cultivate stage is high, all right? Because we didn't find everything out. So as we go through this, let's take a look at what milestones are. Milestones are nothing more than individual stepping stones that help guide sales representatives through the process to help ensure they don't skip steps. And by doing this, it helps accelerate the process. When we, in fact, follow the process, we have greater success. The process is like a recipe. If we skip steps, it's going to change the outcome. You know, I don't know how many of you guys enjoy cooking. I personally enjoy cooking a lot. But if, in fact, I can't follow the recipe, or if I go out of order, it's going to change the outcome. If I choose not to go ahead and put baking soda in something that I am baking, it's going to have a tremendous output of that. So Meredith, here's a question for you. you know, you work now with us and you have implemented sales process, pipeline process, and milestones at a couple of organizations. What has been the greatest benefit to installing a well-defined sales process for either the managers and the sales reps?
So let's start off with the sales managers. A well-defined process gives back the sales manager time. Huge, right? So time to focus on leading, coaching, and driving performance of their team. Specifically, by having a well-defined process, the frontline sales leader can have a strategic coaching conversation around those milestones or best practices needed for her or his rep to achieve in order to make the sale faster, to accelerate the pipeline. So that's what our sales managers get out of having a well-defined process. For our sales reps, the greatest benefit to installing a well-defined process, including a high performer, a tenured high performing rep, is just what you spoke of earlier, is the recipe for achieving consistent high impact results. It's now spelled out for them, right, in a very easy, approachable layout. So think about your reps who are not in the top 20%. How helpful is it to have for them the recipe to the secret sauce of your top sales performers? And for your high performers, well, they're already doing this, right? They have countless spreadsheets, they're very organized, they have it all. Well, now we have the well-defined process in an easy, accessible format versus having to rely on them to create a spreadsheet on their own.
Yeah, Meredith, I really appreciate what you said there. And you think about it, if you take it to the next step when you're looking at the value to the sales reps, think about those new hires, right? I love the fact that you talked about giving them that recipe for success right off the bat when they're coming into the organization. Why not go ahead and have a recipe for success? And so when this is built out, it's obviously been built out through, not from us. I mean, the recipe is our client's recipe. You know, we've done this with you several times. It's what the best of the best are doing in your organization. Why not go ahead and share those with the new hires that are coming on board?
Absolutely.
So as we kind of move on, let's do another poll question here. We're going to switch topics on you. This poll question says how would you respond to this statement? My sales team effectively leverages advocates and neutralizes adversaries early in the process. My sales team effectively leverages their advocates and neutralizes adversaries early in the process. Is it absolutely, sometimes, or not a chance? So it's not just simply about knowing who the influencers are, but it's about being proactive. Is your team proactive at leveraging those advocates? Are they proactive at neutralizing their adversaries? We're going to hear from Meredith here in a little bit in terms of how she has helped her sales reps do a better job of really kind of identifying advocates and being proactive around neutralizing adversaries. Tim, let's go ahead and let's close out that poll, or give them another couple of seconds.
Well, thanks, Steve. Let's go ahead and, folks, I'm going to go slowly toward the poll close button. If you want to wrap up your choices, that'd be great. And then we'll share the results with the room. Excellent, everybody. Thanks so much for sharing with us. Let me close this off. And Steve and Meredith, here are the results.
Okay. So again, I have to kind of laugh. We have 0 people saying absolutely here. So, but yeah, so the good news is, this is good news sometimes. So 75% of you simply say sometimes our sales team is being proactive at leveraging their advocates and developing strategies to neutralize their adversaries. The thing we have to think about is, why doesn't that happen on a more regular basis? Hey, Meredith, let me throw that question to you. And Tim, if we can kind of go back to the slide deck. But Meredith, why do you think that there isn't more consistency? 75% of the people said maybe. You know, in other words, they do this maybe sometimes type thing. What is it? Why do you think that might be true? Why don't we do it all the time?
Again, I think it comes back to time in terms of hitting the pause button. So taking the time up front so that we can move quicker later. That just doesn't happen, right? So I think that's just it. And it also ties back into making those assumptions as well that we spoke about earlier.
Yeah,
that the
I think,
reps make these assumptions and they don't feel the need to go back and check.
yeah, I think that's so true. I mean, assumptions are one of those dangerous things, but all sales reps do it. And they're probably a number one culprit of why opportunities stall and don't accelerate. So let's talk a little bit about managing these key influencers. We talked about this as kind of our second bullet, as one of the things we want to do is provide you with a tool or some ideas on things that you can do to help your sales team ensure that they're effectively managing those key influencers. But simply knowing who they are isn't enough. You know, we must help our sales team to think critically about how to best manage those key influencers. And so here's a little tool that might be useful for you. We call this tool an influencer snapshot. The influencer snapshot is nothing but a simple 2x2 matrix that helps us assess the influencers in terms of their level of influence and their level of advocacy. And it's designed to simply help develop a plan of action. It's not there to simply test, do you really know who has high influence and who doesn't? We kind of are thinking, this is about the critical thinking skills. It's not about challenging, how do you really know? But it is important for us to begin exploring that. So why do we call this tool an influencer snapshot? Well, the term snapshot, if you think about it, is simply a snapshot in time. So here's a picture of maybe a dilapidated apartment. This is what it looks like at some point in time. And maybe this is what it looks like after a strategy and a plan was put together and it's done. So it's simply a snapshot in time. And this is probably something that took place over months. And if we were to take the snapshots, not just before and after, but even during, you will see improvement. It's not any different even in the real business world. If we have a snapshot that looks like this with a certain level of influencers, and you can see some people are on the adversarial side, you might want to go ahead and over time change it to maybe look something a little bit more like this. But it's simply a snapshot in time. And there's 4 ways to which, by managing the influencers through a tool like the influencer snapshot, can help you accelerate revenue. Number 1, it helps validate who's really an advocate as opposed to simply a user of your solutions. Think about that just for a moment. If you were to ask your sales representatives who their greatest advocates are in their accounts, would they tell you it's the people that are using their product? I'm not saying that those users are not an advocate, but how do you know? Okay, every user isn't an advocate. We're going to talk a little bit about that later. Number 2, it helps exposes reps to move beyond their comfort zone. Meredith, a quick question. Who are your sales representatives most likely to engage with in any of their accounts?
But definitely the ones that are the nicest to them.
So, of course, I mean, that's the reason I have you on here with me, because you're nice, right? But I think there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, all kidding aside, I do believe the fact that the human nature is the fact we want to hang out with people that are nice and people that like us and people that we like in general. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to help us accelerate an opportunity from the early stages all the way to a fully adopted client, to a contracted client. So it helps us move beyond identifying, kind of steps outside our comfort zone by identifying who really is involved. It challenges the reps to think strategically about how to neutralize their adversaries. And finally, it helps eliminate surprises. One of the questions that we enjoy asking is when sales representatives will fill out this particular snapshot tool, say something like this. This will take any sales representative probably less than 5 minutes to say, hey, in your account, who has high influence, who has low influence, who do you see as an advocate, and who do you see as an adversary? But here's a question you ought to think about. If your competitor had to fill this out, who would be on their snapshot that's not on yours? Does your sales representatives know? So once we get this picture right, we now have to think a little bit about what do we do about this? Well, if you look at this picture, we have to ask ourselves, is this a promising picture? Well, frankly, 4 out of the top 6 key influencers are not supporters of ours. And 2 of the top 3, the purchasing and the physician number 2, 2 of the top 3 aren't big fans. So what do we do? And so if we have, say, multiple people working in the account, they may have different strategies. Or a sales strategy might come up and simply say, hey, I think this is what we need to do. If Meredith and I are partners in this account, or if I'm her manager and I'm challenging her thinking, Meredith will simply say, hey, I need to, neutralize everybody. Anybody who doesn't like us, I need to make them like us. Is that really realistic? And so that's maybe a strategy. Maybe an alternative strategy is something like this. Pretty radical here. So how are you going to reduce the level of influence of somebody like in purchasing, your highest advocate, your highest level of adversary? How are you going to reduce their influence? Well, maybe a strategy is by raising the level of influence of these physician number 1, number 2, as well as the OR manager. Make their voices be heard. But there's several different ways. There's not a right or a wrong. Every opportunity is going to be different. So this influencer snapshot is simply just that. It's a tool to help your salespeople make sure they're effectively managing all of the key influencers in a way that prevents opportunities from stalling in the pipeline process. So Meredith, here's another question for you. What was the most common trap you saw your sales team falling into prior to implementing the influencer snapshot at some of the companies you've worked with in the past?
Yeah, that's easy because I did this myself as a sales rep, right? We think everyone loves us. We believe that most of our key contacts within our accounts would definitely advocate for us, right? So we do not typically, as sales reps, we don't typically take the time to truly understand how our customers view us compared to our competition. Another common trap can be, frankly, avoidance. If we have a key contact within an account that is disagreeable with us, or or disagreeable with our product, we tend to avoid that person. But as you know, that same person could be highly influential within the account, and we never really take the time to create a strategic plan to either neutralize their level of influence or potentially increase their level of advocacy.
Meredith, how are your managers helping your sales representatives kind of have that exposed and help them think about this differently? What are your managers doing?
Yeah, what the managers are doing now with the implementation of this tool is asking different coaching questions. So not just necessarily asking the who and did you do it, but deeper questions, more around the how. How are you qualifying, or how do you know that this person is an advocate? And the why, like what's the strategy going to be on how you're going to approach this person?
Yeah, I think that's such a good best practice that managers can simply use this tool by drawing it up on a 2x2 matrix, right? It's not very complicated. Simply know who has high influence, low influence, who loves you, and who does, and simply say, let's talk about this, right? And you come to finally expose the fact that, wow, maybe this picture isn't as inviting as it really should be. I think that's a great insight, Meredith. Thanks for sharing with that. So here's 6 questions for you guys. And this is in the handout that you guys are going to be getting. I encourage you guys to share these questions with your managers or with your sales reps. They should be able to answer these questions for any opportunity that might be in the mid stage of the process. Question number 1, it says, how has the uncertain economy changed the critical metrics your key influencers are responsible for this fiscal year? Or maybe, how are the key influencers measuring their success against those metrics? Or who is your competition speaking to in the account that you're not? Question I asked earlier. Here's one. What has been said or done to confirm that your advocates truly support your solution? Another question is how have you leveraged your advocates to help neutralize your adversaries? And finally, what can be done if you can't neutralize or reduce the influence of your strongest adversaries? These are just questions that your sales representatives, if they have good answers for this, can prevent an opportunity from stalling. If they can't answer these questions, they might be at risk of having an opportunity sit there for months and months and months on end. So it's all about being proactive. It's not simply about knowing who's important and who's not. It's about being proactive and leveraging those people. Let's move on to our final topic. So here's a poll question for you. Do your sales representatives know the real reason they lost their last sale? So think about that just for a moment. There's a lot of reasons sales representatives will give as to why they lost. I want you to focus your answer on the real reason. Do your sales reps know the real reason they lost their last sale? Absolutely they do. Maybe they might, or not a chance. So think about that just for a moment. Meredith, from your experience, where do you think most of your sales representatives would have fallen on this prior to some of the education that we've done with your team?
It would definitely be 50%, maybe, and 50% not a chance.
Well, let's take a look, Tim, to see if some of Meredith's experiences kind of align with the people that are participating in this webinar today.
Well, thanks, Steve. I'm going to go ahead and close off the poll, everybody. Make your last choices in the next couple of seconds here. Everybody, thank you so much. Let me close the poll and let me show you how right Meredith was.
Okay. Well, these numbers are a little bit better, Meredith, than what you've experienced in the past. Not 50,
They're just being nicer. They're being nicer.
They're being nicer. You're being a little bit critical on your team, are you?
I am.
So the good news is that maybe, and it's probably a really good answer, because yes, I think that's probably true. In many situations, there very well might be true that they understand what the real reason was. But how can we really know that for sure? Well, let's go into our final topic here, and let's take a look at this. So how do we find out answers to this question is really the next topic. It's our final topic. Well, when we asked this questions and our win-loss analyses that we conducted, our post-mortem, 71% of the account managers said they lost because the competition provided a lower cost solution. Now, they use that in terms of price or the other competitor bundled or whatever the case might be. 71% said they knew, and it was because there was a lower price. Well, when we asked the question, what was the decision criteria the customer was using other than cost or price? 86% of the sales reps didn't know. So think about that for a moment. If you're saying you lost because of price, or frankly, anything, they say they lost because delivery terms. Say, great. Other than delivery terms, what was the decision criteria the customer was using to compare you? Customers aren't using just one criteria, okay? So we have to ask that question. And so if a sales representative gives you an answer and provides you with a list of decision criteria, ask 2 follow-up questions. Whose criteria is this? Remember, it's not often one person making the decision. Is this Bob, Mary, Frank's? Whose is this? Or what criteria did this customer believe was your weakest attribute? If you don't know how well you stack rank against this criteria, you're likely to lose anyway. So you need to know the criteria. So here's the last point is here's 90% of the managers couldn't answer those last 2 questions, by the way, not honestly. And these are on deals that they lost. So it's a really important factor. Well, here's another 2x2 matrix, guys. Again, it's another snapshot tool. We call this the competitive snapshot. And let's talk about 4 ways to which we can help you accelerate. Number 1, the tool encourages sales representative to ask the question, what are the decision criteria you're using to compare us to the competition? If your sales representatives don't know, they're always going to blame price, or they're always going to blame some other factor that might not necessarily be true. So they have to ask the question. And the second point is, in helping customers identify their decision criteria can often speed up the decision-making process. I was on a meeting with one of my sales reps yesterday, and he asked the question, hey, I know that you're looking at learning company A and us. Just out of curiosity, what is the decision criteria that you're using to make your decision? And the customer kind of said, wow, haven't really thought about that. They said, well, let's talk about it, which kind of provides us the opportunity to number 3. Because with a clear picture, the sales representative can develop proactive strategies to better position their value and unique differentiators. So in this particular case, our sales representative simply said, let's talk about the decision criteria that you're using. And one of the criteria that they were considering wasn't anything that had to do with a simulation-based learning design. Well, that happens to be one of our unique differentiators, is everything we do is a simulation-based learning. We don't teach through PowerPoint. And so he was able to go ahead and influence, simply saying, based upon what you've seen here, do you think that it would be wiser to go ahead and offer more of a traditional training, something that is PowerPoint role-play driven, or do you think that there's value in maybe adding to your criteria, only working with a company that might offer some kind of a simulation-based design? And she said, oh, I absolutely see what has to happen here. So she added that to it. And then number 4 is knowing the decision criteria and the top 3 key influencers provides a smart strategy to neutralize your adversaries. Think about it. If you're trying to neutralize an adversary, Why don't you ask that adversary, that person who's not a fan of yours, what's the criteria that you're using to compare me against the competition? Maybe what they're going to say is something like this. Oops, they're going to say something like this. They may say it's product safety, overall cost, ease of use, ROI, breadth of offering, and post-sale support. And this is maybe what the adversary's decision criteria is. They like you because you offer a product that's very safe, and it happens to be their #1 criteria. But overall cost and the product is not easy to use, and I hear that you guys don't offer very good support after the sale, is a real big concern of mine. So by knowing this, you now can develop a proactive strategy to change it. And maybe the strategy is doing something like this. It's changing the mindset of that customer around how they're defining cost, or understanding simply where did they hear that the post-sale support or the ease of use isn't as good as they think it is. So, or maybe the strategy is a little bit different, similar to what we showed in the influencer snapshot. So these are things to which we can help salespeople do a better job of accelerating the pipeline simply by understanding the decision criteria. So let's go back to some insights on Meredith. Meredith, what have you done to help your sales team recognize the importance of identifying and influencing the customer's decision criteria?
Yeah, so we've helped our sales team recognize the importance of identifying and influencing the customer's criteria in a few different ways. One would be, let's work smarter, not harder. If we understand our customer's decision criteria up front, it's just that much easier to accelerate the sales process and accelerate the pipeline. Number 2, slow down to speed up. So again, by taking time up front to learn the customer's decision criteria, we can increase our close rate. As an example would be, when we don't know our customer's decision criteria, that's when, for instance, product evaluations just seem to linger on past the 30, 60, 90-day mark with no purchase order. And then lastly, I would say a key piece of this is development. So we've positioned this training solution as an investment in their development at both the field level and sales leadership level, with learning how to strategize and influence the customer's decision criteria. And this criteria, this is, as we all know, this is critical because we know that when investment in development is just key to attracting and retaining top talent. So those are the 3 different ways that we've been able to help the sales team recognize, just how important it is in terms of identifying and influencing the customer's decision criteria.
Thank you, Meredith. I want to just kind of unpack one of the things you said. How often do you think you see your sales teams in the past, and any company, all the companies you've worked with in the past, go ahead and provide a trial, a demo, maybe provide pricing before really understanding the decision criteria that the customer is using?
Oh, that would happen quite often. And frankly, it would just result in, dare I say, like millions of dollars of inventory just sitting out in customer accounts. Again, getting back to that example of product evaluations, product would be placed and talk about dangerous assumptions. It was the rep who made the assumption that, okay, if everyone uses the product for, the set amount agreed upon a time, there'll be the purchase order at the end. Yeah. And when that didn't happen, it was, oh, wait a minute, maybe we should go back 3 or 4 steps and really validate and verify the customer's decision criteria.
Yeah, so important, absolutely so critically important. So here's 6 questions. Again, take these 6 questions and use them either for your managers or give them out to your sales reps. They should be able to answer these questions for any opportunity in their early to or mid stages of the pipeline process. One is, how have the changes in the market impacted the customer's decision criteria? Let's face it, the criteria that they were using pre-pandemic is very different than the criteria that they're using to make a decision in this post-pandemic market, no matter what you're selling, whether it be a pharmaceutical, a biotech, or capital equipment, okay? Question number 2, when considering all of the key influencers, whose decision criteria matters most? Do they know? What about this one? What decision criteria is the customer not considering that they should? Remember the example I provided you with my sales representative yesterday. The other one is, what is your strategy to change the customer's perception when they believe you aren't as strong as your competitor? you're not going to be winning all of those decision criteria. If so, there's no competition. Next one says, what is the best way to reduce the importance of a decision criteria where the customer perceives you are weak? And then finally, what is your strategy to raise the level of importance of decision criteria that the customer believes isn't critical? Let's just suppose that efficacy is important to the customer, but not as important as something else. What's the strategy to raise the level of efficacy of your solution? Have your team thought about it? So these are just a couple of questions that I think could be very useful. So let's summarize what we talked about here today. Well, you've heard the term assumptions from Meredith a couple of times, that if we want to accelerate the pipeline revenue, it all starts with challenging the assumptions of the sales team in 3 areas. Number 1, is the opportunity in the right stage? Challenging sales representatives around what they should know before moving forward. What do they know? What don't they know? And have they done it well enough? Simply knowing they've identified the key influencers, but not challenging their assumptions around how do you know these really are the influencers is a big deal. Have they neutralized their adversaries? How do they know? Most salespeople will engage with those people, as Meredith said earlier, with the people that like or are willing to engage with them. It's not enough. And then finally, do they know the customer's decision criteria? In the absence of knowing this decision criteria, they will often blame price as the reasons why the opportunity is stalled or maybe even lost. So we hope that you got something out of this. Before we turn over to questions, I'll just let you know that I encourage you to go over to our website, igniteselling.com, and you will see a free e-learning module, okay, to both that influencer snapshot and the competitive snapshot. Go take advantage of it. Go sign up, share it with your people, but it's a free tool for you guys to use to help your sales teams do a better job of making sure that they're doing things that have been proven that they need to accelerate the pipeline process. So I'd like to turn this over now to Tim to kind of manage some Q&A. Tim, have there been any questions that have come in that for either Meredith or I?
Thanks, Steve. We do have some questions coming in, folks. If you have any questions, you can type them in now using the questions window there on the control panel. And I'm just going to dive into this list. Steve, I'm going to start with one that Melody sent in, and I'll warn you that this was sent in quite a while ago. And Melody, I apologize for the delay. She asked, when we were talking about opportunities stalling in the pipeline, Melody asked, was the data you shared, was that what reps were told by the customer, or were reps making assumptions about things, basically?
Yeah, back in that research, Melanie, what it is that the customer, the account manager, gave my team access to their customer. And so we were doing a post-mortem. And in that post-mortem, we would ask the sales rep. The sales rep gave us a response. Then we went and talked to their customer. And we usually did it 3 by 3. We went 3 high and 3 low. And so we talked to 6 to 9 people in every account. And we asked the exact same question. So if the question was, who are the influencers involved in making this decision? We asked that question several times inside that account. And we did that, not the sales rep. And so the customers gave us that information because we were an outside consultant doing a study, and they were likely to give us that information. So I hope that if you want a copy of this, I'd be happy to chat with you a little bit more about some of that data. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Steve. And to that point, Melody, Steve has shared his email address here, and so has Meredith. They're both open to offline questions as well.
Thank you.
A question from Don. Is the pipeline process dependent on what sales model you use?
No, not at all. Thank you, Meredith. I see Meredith shaking her head no too. Yeah, Meredith, you want to take that one? Why, Don's question was, does the sales pipeline have to be kind of aligned to the sales methodology or sales process?
Yeah, it does not, in that if you think about the sales pipeline or the sales process, that is the what. Okay, so that's going to be the what that your organization partners with Ignite Selling to develop. So all those milestones, best practices, those are all captured. And then if you think about a sales methodology, that's really the how. How do you then take that pipeline and have a common language around it with your customers or internally between the field and sales leaders? So the two you at some level you want them to complement, but it's not dictate the sales process, or I'm sorry, the pipeline process will not dictate the sales methodology, nor the other way around.
Good job, Meredith. I mean, the only one thing I would add to that is the fact that we have implemented and designed custom sales processes for people that are using Richardson, SPI, Miller Hyman, PSS, you name it, because it's good to know what the methodology is so that we can write those milestones in the context of the language, but it's the what, it's not the how. So I like how you said that, Meredith. Thank you. What else came up here, Tim?
Steve, we have a comment and a question from Ryan. Thank you, Ryan. Ryan says, this sounds like an outstanding comprehensive analysis to perform on opportunities. Do your reps do this for every account?
No, they shouldn't. I mean, I think that when you start looking at tools like these two tools that we shared with you today, the influencer and the competitive snapshot, and you start making this mandatory for every account, all of a sudden you're doubling their job. I haven't met a sales representative yet that simply says, yeah, I need more work on my plate. So no, what we actually do is we say, let's take a look at maybe one of those tools. You never have to do both. We call them tools, by the way, because they're simply a tool that helps us kind of get unstuck or helps us better dig into something that we need to know. It's not a form that needs to be filled out. And it should only be used on those accounts that are most critical for now. Could you justify that it should be used for every account? Yes, but by gosh, we encourage you, don't do that. Use it for the accounts that are most critical now. And we typically find in the life sciences space, whether it be in the pharmaceutical, biotech, or med device space, that any sales representative that's using any of these tools, maybe just one or both of these tools or any of the other ones we might have, for more than, gosh, 2 accounts, 3 accounts per quarter, you're asking, that's a lot of work, because these things are updated on a regular basis. And there's neither the need nor the time to have to dig that deep around every account. Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate your comment.
Another question for you, Stephen Meredith, the leadership buy-in question. How do you get buy-in from sales leadership for training to be engaged in the sales process, to be disengaged in the sales process?
Yeah, that's kind of the million-dollar question. And I think that one way to get buy-in at senior levels is you need to tie it back to what's in it for them. I mean, let's face it. I mean, right now, we're called in on a regular basis to have conversations with the chief revenue officers, vice presidents of sales, the presidents of divisions, because they're all struggling with capturing revenue, accelerating the pipeline. The better that you can align the value of things like this to what matters most to them, the greater likelihood you are to get their buy-in. Meredith, I want you to think a little bit about that too, because you and I have worked at that senior level, we are now, as well as other companies we've worked in the past. But what was it that got people in your other organizations, as well as this organization, to simply say, we need to slow down to speed up. We need to make an investment now. Think about the companies that you've worked with in the past. What is it that you think your sales leaders have? Why did your sales leaders sometimes make the decision to say, we need to do something now?
Yeah, that's a great question. And as you mentioned, there's going to be a lot of different WIFMs depending on who you're talking to. The organizations that I've worked with in the past, I would say the biggest thing was, frankly, sales leadership development. How can we increase the capacity and bandwidth and strengthen the skill sets of our sales leaders, who frankly then go and touch a larger population, being the reps? So if we could hone in on them, we're going to have a bigger impact, right, on our field, and thus revenue and performance. So the beauty of these tools that we discussed today really have such an amazing opportunity to take, a really, really good manager and make them great through these really wonderful coaching questions that we have for all of this. So, just to kind of tag along with that, if we can strengthen the skill set around the coaching questions of the sales leaders, what's going to happen over time? Well, the rep is going to come to that one-on-one or that coaching conversation prepared with the answers. Yeah. And so then we're actually increasing the skill set of the field. So it's a little bit of a trickle effect, but you get the point that that was the area that we focused most on.
Thank you, Meredith. You know, you said something that was interesting, and it is about the whipping for different people. I think another way to look at this is, as sales enablement professionals, if we understand the sales strategies that the organization needs to implement, say in FY21, that's going to help them achieve their sales goals. They have a revenue goal that's going to increase by 11%, margin that needs to increase by 4%. But if we understand what the strategies are, for example, is it a penetration strategy? We're going to go deeper and broader inside our existing accounts, or is it driving adoption, or is it taking revenue share, market share from a competitor? What's the strategy? If we understand what the strategies are, we then can align how can we help as sales enablement professionals help their people better execute that strategy. So my question to you would be is, what's the strategy that the company is trying to do next year? Are they doing something different, or is it more of the same? Well, I can pretty much guarantee you after this year, it is about doing something different going into 2021. My question is do you know what it is? If you know what that is, our jobs as sales enablement professionals is to demonstrate how our capabilities can help drive those strategies. Thank you, Tim. I appreciate that.
Folks, we have a couple more questions here. If you do have any additional questions for Steve and Meredith, now is a great time to type them in. Meredith, I have one here for you. Many of our sales reps believe that if physicians are using their product, that makes them an advocate. What are some things that you have implemented to help your sales team recognize what real advocacy is?
I think it goes back to the influencer snapshot that Steve shared with everybody earlier, and more specifically, the questions that we can ask around that influencer snapshot once the rep has developed it. So some of the things that a sales rep can do, or that we would want them to go and do to truly recognize if we have true advocacy or not, is to see if that advocate will go speak on your behalf as a sales rep to someone else when that rep isn't there. Give that advocate something to do, give them some specific actions. You know, will that advocate go and set up a meeting on your behalf? Will they, do they know the talking points that we would want that advocate to be able to really stress and hit on with other people in the account, if again, on the sales rep's behalf. So I think it's all about the willingness of that advocate to go and take action on your behalf. And if they don't, well, maybe they're not as strong of an advocate as you thought they were, and you have some work to do.
Excellent.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you. Yeah, one last question. And Steve, this one came in for you. And folks, I say last question. If you're still typing, keep typing. We'll get to them. Our people don't sell on price, they sell on value. So do you think the competitive snapshot tool is necessary?
Yeah, I mean, we want everybody to be selling on value, not price. And the question that I would have when people say they sell on value is, what are the 4 or 5 unique differentiators that you would identify as your value? And so maybe that value is your ability to, perform procedures in a physician's office, and that's unique to you. Or maybe that's something that's unique is that your recovery time is 5 times faster because you have a study that demonstrates that. And you really want to demonstrate that value. My question to any sales representatives in your organization would be are those things built into the decision criteria your customers using to compare you against the competition? Because if your unique differentiators, the things that you demonstrate as valuable to your customers, are you aligning that to the decision criteria? It may never be price. One particular client that we worked with lost because of their product's image quality. They were selling a monitor type device. I won't get into the details of it, but their image quality, and I'm not a radiologist, but I can look at the differences between these two. And I know that company A and company B, the image quality of company A is far better than company B. The competitor still chose to do business with company B. All right. And they said it was because of the rep said it was because of image quality. It had anything to do with image quality. It was workflow. So we have to make sure that we're really being mindful of what that decision criteria is. Selling value over price is critical, but make sure you know how to demonstrate value and make sure that value is part of the decision criteria. Any other questions, Tim?
Well, no, I think that brings us to the end of the hour. It looks like we're right there, folks. Again, if you're still typing a question, keep typing it in. We will get you an answer either live or offline. But if you have any additional questions, keep typing them in. Steve and Meredith, great presentation. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you very much. And again, I encourage you guys to go to igniteselling.com and then go to that part that simply says, we're here to help. And you can click on that thing, we're here to help, and you'll see the e-learning modules for some of these tools. So take advantage of them. We're putting them out there for people to take advantage of and support their own organizations during this kind of difficult time. So thank you.
Thank you. Folks, just as a close, I'm going to share some housekeeping items here for you. I wanted to, first of all, I'll tell you to save the dates, June 7th to 10th. Those are the dates we're planning for the LTEN 2021 annual conference. We're optimistically hoping to be able to get together in person in the Denver area at the Gaylord Rockies. But if not, we'll get together virtually. So please do save those dates because you are cordially invited to our 50th anniversary LTEN conference. And we hope to see you there. You can find out more information on the LTEN conference website, or you can visit the LTEN website here. We'll also link you to the conference. Today's webinar is also going to be archived here on the LTEN website on our self-directed learning library. You can also, on the website, you can access other webinars. You can access our focus publications, our certificate series workshops, our training partner directory, and of course, our e-learning lounge micro-learning programs. You can find many of these also available through the LTEN On The Go app. And finally, I'm going to invite you all back here for our next webinar, Friday, December 11th, actually. I'm sorry this date has been changed now. I apologize for that. It's Friday, December 11th. We'll be talking about building an agile learning function. We're going to send out a mail and tell you about that program too, and we hope to see you there. But you can visit the webinar registration page here at this address and register for any of our programs now. Here's the address for the on-demand self-directed learning library where today's webinar will be housed. And again, we're going to send you a follow-up email with a direct link to this recording in about an hour or so from now. And finally, there's my email address up here. Again, if I can help with anything, don't hesitate to reach out. Let me send some final thank yous. Steve Gielda and Meredith Bontempo, great presentations. Again, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you
Steve.
so much. We appreciate it. Stay safe, everybody. Bye-bye.
There you go, and I'll echo that too. I'm going to thank Ignite Selling for sponsoring today's program, and I'm going to thank all of you for attending. And like Steve said, I'm going to say stay safe, be well, enjoy your weekend, and we will talk to you all soon. Bye-bye, everyone.